Hello, everyone, and welcome to Canadians with Disabilities and Their Allies. My name is Brent. I'm the host for the show, and today I have a special guest, and I'm welcoming Rowan Burdge from BC Poverty Reduction Coalition. Thank you very much, Rowan, for joining me today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, both of you.
Yeah, thank you. It's a great pleasure having you on. So, can you tell me a little bit about BC Poverty Reduction Coalition and how did you get involved with the organization?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you again for having me. My name is Rowan Burdge. I'm the provincial director of the BC Poverty Reduction Coalition. I use she and they pronouns, and I'm calling in today from the unceded lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nations. The BC Poverty Reduction Coalition is a coalition of about 80 different organizations that includes more grassroots community mobilizations, some nonprofits, labor unions, different folks invested in reducing and eliminating poverty across British Columbia. So we're a coalition of folks that get together and work on public policy solutions that don't just reduce poverty, but aim to, in fact, eradicate poverty entirely across British Columbia. And I came to this work a little bit through both combination of, I'd say, lived experience as a person with a chronic illness who has an expensive chronic illness who pays a lot of money out of pocket for medical supplies, which is kind of how I got more involved in the advocacy side. And also as somebody who has a background in frontline housing work in the downtown east side. And so bringing together both lived experience and policy work is really important to me, and having kind of both components of that be present in my job is incredible. So I've been with the PRC for about a year and a half now, and really enjoying the work, and there's always more to do. So it's a really important area that I'm sure a lot of folks can respond to right now. Poverty is in many of our lives, and so it's a really important role that I have, and a great organization of many different stakeholders.
Yeah. Great. It's definitely poverty doesn't need to exist in British Columbia or anywhere in Canada at all. I mean, we live in such a wealthy nation. So when I hear poverty, I think of why does poverty even exist? And there's so many reasons why there's poverty. I mean, it shouldn't exist. There's a lot of issues in life where people, their lived experience, right? They all have stories of why things have happened to themselves, unforeseen circumstances. They're born with a disability, or they've developed a disability, or they've become homeless. There's so many aspects that contribute to that, and it adds on more of a burden to like more poverty. Like if you're paying out more in medical expenses and expensive housing, the cost of food, as we know, I mean, it's gone up, and it still keeps going up.
Astronomically,
and that adds on to poverty, right? Because you're paying all your money out in so many areas, and you don't have money put back into the economy, into each community. So what is your take on that? Like, how do you see the poverty playing into those kind of roles, like into those, roles into those channels of issues that are happening in today's society?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, what you said before was really important. Poverty, I think we've been taught to believe that poverty is an individual choice or an individual responsibility, when in fact it's a political choice that collectively, has been made and impacts many people. That poverty is absolutely not inevitable. It's not a natural phenomenon. It's something that we can prevent, and it's something that we can intervene on. And in fact, we are a very wealthy province, BC, and we absolutely have the means to end poverty entirely in BC. So I do want to make sure that point is clear for folks. Like, poverty is
Yeah.
not an individual. Nobody wakes up and decides to be living in poverty or living in terrible conditions. So we need to keep that in mind. And I think you're right that right now we're seeing, a rising cost of food, gas, inflation's really impacting people, even as we're recovering from things like COVID-19, like some of the, extreme weather events that really impacted many, many people, including, drastic catastrophic floods, heat domes, things like that, that have really put people, made people very vulnerable and impacted things like our food systems that have caused impacts that are cascading. And in fact, it's the majority of folks that are experiencing the burden of those impacts are working people, low income people, people with disabilities, Indigenous peoples, and none of those folks should have to live in the ways that they're having to live right now. And the choices that people are having to make around paying for medication, putting food on the table, those are not choices that people should have to make. And unfortunately, we're in a situation now where poverty is impacting many people in deep, deep ways, and it's entirely preventable suffering, in my opinion.
Well, just before we launched the show here, we were talking a little bit off camera, and we were talking about the fact here in BC that the provincial minister for social development is starting to do these town hall meetings, poverty reduction town hall meetings. And the thing that kind of bugs me, of course, is when they put feelers out and they say, well, tell us how to reduce poverty, like it's some sort of like, tell us the magic solution for reducing poverty. And I was like, are you kidding? You've already studied this thing to death. Like, what the solution is. Like, raising the rates and like stopping the clawbacks. Yeah. That's it. Raise the rates and stop the clawbacks. And yet they come out and they're like, well, give us the magic solution. Like, well, what's this fix for poverty? And they know it. And yet they think that we all have like dunce caps on them. We don't know what we're talking about or something. I don't know, but it's kind of insulting the way they do that.
Yeah, because like there was a report that was actually put out. I'm glad you mentioned that, Neil, because there was a report that was put out on January 28th of 2021. It was a completed report. It was submitted, and that report was worked on many months beforehand during COVID times. Right, way back then, and so when the minister who was then in charge knew about that report, right, but it got delivered in January 28th, 2021, when we had the supplement that was given out, and that changed people's lives in so many positive ways. Of here's $300, right, but now we're going to take it away because you don't need that $300, right? Cost of living wasn't going to go up, or rents or. No, but we're going to give you back 175 of it because, people said, we need to live. So, we'll give you back some of it. So people cried out about it. And that was every right? They're upset saying, why can't you just give back the full 300? Well, that's the best we can do right now. 2 years fast forward, well, here's the other $125, but that's an increase, right? So rather than just giving people that money all at once, or for me personally, I had to move because I didn't have the full $300 that was made permanent. They made the 175 permanent. Now here's the other 125. So I had to make a huge sacrifice to where I was living, and because I couldn't afford it. If I had that money, my whole outcome would have been different. So and that's called legislated poverty, right? Because they've deliberately do these things knowing that it's going to have a huge impact on someone's life, where if they were to listen to lived experience, listen to people, God forbid, right? Do the right thing and actually listen and look at the report. Because that report, I didn't even read through the whole thing. It's over 500 pages.
Very long report, yes.
And that was very in-depth report. And it actually shows all the issues that are happening. And now they want to do a town hall meeting and say, let's talk about it, right? Yeah. Wow.
the key word you said there, Brent, is deliberate. The whole thing it's very, very deliberate. Like, and again, one of the comments made off camera before we launched was, the fact, like, when Shane Simpson was the minister, he had a similar, town hall thing where I went to see him. He had it in Surrey here. And And so they give you a booklet and they say, oh yeah, we're going to take a whole bunch of questions and things like that. But the thing about it was, it was all kind of prepackaged, and it was like, you knew the way the booklet was designed, certain questions were off the table. You couldn't ask anything about raising the rates. Like, and that's like one of the biggest like, of course you're going to want to ask questions about that, and you couldn't ask anything about raising the rates. That was off the table. It's like, help us solve poverty, but don't mention anything about rates. That's off the table. And it's like, how can that be off the table? And how can you have an honest discussion about poverty when raising the rates is off the table in a public discusussion? That's, to me, it's just ridiculous. Just really ridiculous.
I remember when I went to some of the town hall meetings too, and you were only allowed to ask one question each. So Sonia asked a question. I believe it was, are you going to increase the shelter? And I asked him, are you going to tie the rates to inflation? And the answer was no to both questions. And I bet, well, rents were at the same time back then, and that was when he was doing Shaneson was doing the town hall meetings, and the shelter at that time was still $375. Now, technically, okay, like they're going to be given that increase of $125 to the shelter, but that doesn't take effect until July 19th. So technically, those rates are still frozen until July 19th. So 125 added to that 375, the historic, I call it archaic rates, is now going to push it to $500. Where can you find a place to rent in the province of British Columbia for $500 a month for market rent? Let alone even like the subsidized housing. They don't even benefit from that 125 at all. So I think it was a divide between disabled versus disabled, and that's wrong. I know in the report, it actually indicated there was a suggestion, which it was really emphasized in there too, about combining both shelter and rent, or they call it shelter and support, combining it all into one. So regardless of their accommodation, their living situation, they're always going to have that check. That wouldn't change people's lives in so many ways. So if they can't afford that high market rent, maybe they can only afford, because cost of living, $200, $300, and they can pay a landlord to say, hey, yeah, you can stay here, but I require you just to, chip in, give me some money, the flat amount. Hey, but according to the government, that's not a fixed address. If it's not a fixed address, you don't get that shelter. So with that recommendation, that would change people's lives in so many ways. I think there was basically a bad opportunity, that what they did was they put that 125 to shelter. I think the opportunity they could have done was just put it to the support, but blend it all into one. Yeah. And I don't know how many jurisdictions in Canada has it. I believe Ontario has it, and British Columbia. I think I heard rumors, a little mumbling, that Alberta was trying to do it that way too, but they never did. But anyway, that's their jurisdiction. What's your view on that? I'm just going on the shelter versus the support.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the report that you mentioned, the Basic Income BC panel report that came out a couple of years ago, is a report that the government itself asks for, these very smart, wonderful academic folks to look into, and they've made a robust series of recommendations around things like a targeted basic income that includes very strong and excellent recommendations, like, for example, extended health for low-income people across BC, and like an overhaul of the way that the disability and income assistance payments are made right now, because we know there's so many barriers and problems for folks. And I think you're right that, what we just saw in budget 2023 is a slight increase to the shelter rate, which, by the way, hadn't been raised since 2006. So the word archaic, I think you used before, is absolutely appropriate. So I do think that you're right that many of those dollars won't go into the hands of people that need it most. It'll go into housing providers and folks, not into, basic necessities like food and medication that many families are really having a hard time, getting right now. But I think you're right that there is this frustration of the government, wanting more recommendations, even though they've been given and come up with these great recommendations from the Basic Panel report. And we continue to advocate to raise the rents, or excuse me, not the rents, the rates. I want to be clear about that, the rates.
Oh, good.
And
Okay.
yeah, across the board, we hear from so many stakeholders that would be the biggest impact on the most people experiencing deep poverty. Like I'm sure you two are aware, but the rates are still well below the poverty line. And the poverty line, of course, has been the line of bare minimum necessity that people need to survive, not not a good life, not an abundant life, but a basic needs life. And we're still treating people as though they deserve to be well below that life. And so that's a huge, huge issue. And I think raising the rates is probably the number one recommendation that we'd make to government around how to actually make people's lives better in BC, especially people experiencing deep poverty. One other interesting piece that I've been thinking a lot about is how with the CERB, we saw people generally found that acceptable, that $2,000 was a good amount to live. And we know that the poverty line is slightly below that. And we know also that people on disability are getting less than that. And so it's very difficult to justify not raising the rates, I think. And so, yeah, I think you're right that it can be really frustrating to have these consultations and over be told we need to raise the rates. We need to, build affordable non-market housing. We need to build accessible housing for people, because there's still, major barriers for people with mobility devices to find places that they can live in. So yeah, I think there's still a lot that needs to happen to move these very, very, I think, reasonable asks forward.
I was going to mention the CERB, so I'm glad you did too, because I know that was, as soon as the pandemic hit and they rolled out the CERB, and then they said, okay, everybody needs $2,000 to live, but then they rolled out nothing for if you were on disability, or in BC here we did get the $600, but it was a one-time payment, $600 one-time payment, and everybody else got $2,000 for 12 months. And it's like there's a little bit of a equity problem there.
But it only went to a certain amount of people.
It only went to some people, not
ETC.
not
yeah, and also like the official poverty level for the LICO formula, just so that people that are watching it, the bare minimum. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned about CERB too, because the bare minimum, when the beginning of the pandemic, was $2,000. Now they indicated, the Fed said $2,000 was the bare minimum that people needed. Now that was in 2020. So now in the 2021 formula came out, and that's $2,200 a month. So annually is $26,400 a year. So it's $2,200 a month. And that is the bare minimum that is supposed to be required for every Canadian in the country. So that doesn't include if a person has a disability, they got other disability related expenses above that amount. So that should be the bare minimum. And I think to get our rates across the country up to that, at least up to that, obviously more is needed for definitely, but at least get it up to that level, so that, because of these high rents right now and the cost of living is skyrocket, at least if we get up to that, people maybe will be able to have housing and combine the rent and the support into one. So now, because the rents are so high, with now boosting that other level up, now it's going to give people that success level, that now they can do more things, put money back into the economy, go and visit people. God forbid if you want to travel. No, you need permission to get out of that province for 30 days. That's got to end too, right? Yeah. And those are clawbacks. It's like a clawback. And Neil will talk about that, about clawback stuff.
I wanted to actually circle around to clawbacks, because last week we had Vivica on the show, and of course she's famous for the Single Mothers Alliance, is famous for ending the clawbacks for the child support. And and that's why I hooked up with her that many years ago, like 8 or 9 years ago, was because I'm very passionate about it, because I've got my survivor's pension clawed back for like 10 years now. And that's another thing that it doesn't, like, you want policy to make sense. Like, it has to make logical sense, right? And like, you can just say, well, a clawback's a clawback, what's the big deal? But the problem is is when the government says we'll allow $15,000 of exempt income every year. They say it used to be like $1,000 a month, and they've increased it to $15,000 for the year. When they say you can have exempt income of $15,000 for the year, but then they turn around and say, you know what? If you have your spouse die, I'm sorry, we're not going to cover that. I mean, that does not make sense. Like, how can you be so perverse and punishing and say we'll allow $15,000 of exempt income? I can't even say exempt. Sorry. But then say, you know, your SOL if your spouse dies. Sorry, we're not gonna cover that. And I mean, the government's famous for saying things like wraparound supports and and all that kind of stuff, like targeted incomes and wraparound. Well, what do you think what do you think a survivor's pension is? A survivor's pension is a targeted support. It's a wraparound support, and so they're perpetuating their own arguments of like, let's have a wraparound support. Let's do a targeted income. Well, that's exactly what a survivor's pension is. That's exactly what a WCB claim is. That's exactly what a veteran's pension is, or whatever. And they just say, you know what, we're going to just invalidate it, and it doesn't matter. To heck with all like targeted incomes, to heck with all the wraparound supports. Your wraparound support of your survivor's pension doesn't matter, and that to me is just crazy. It doesn't make logical. There's no logical sense there. There's a complete gap in logic, right?
Yeah, I think that can be so frustrating from the outside to see, these decisions being made and be like, that just doesn't make common sense. Like anybody can say, like, well, if you don't want people to be in poverty, then why wouldn't you allow people to work and not claw that back from them? Because essentially you're forcing people to be capped out under the poverty line without any recourse or any ability. And then they wonder why folks are going into gray economies or, not claiming work or, like taking measures into their own hands when they're not able to afford basic needs and basic necessities. That reminded me too, when you were speaking too about the issue of the spousal cap for people on disability, which I think is just outrageous. Like,
it's crazy too,
it just forces people to be financially dependent on a partner, rather than make independent life choices, and it really puts people in precarious situations. And they've proven
that causes more domestic violence.
Absolutely.
Because there's more dependency on the spouses, right? And that's not a good place to be.
And that's the that word autonomy, right? It's a huge word, because that's. It allows people to make decisions that are best for themselves. And I'm always so careful with that word autonomy, right? Because it's like it can go different directions. But in general terms, I mean, people should be able to have proper movement of what they want to go. It's like I mentioned just a little while ago, to the listeners who are watching this, it's like, so right now you need to ask permission to leave the province, right? For 30 days, you need to go. I mean, if you want to go over to Nova Scotia to go and visit somebody, or go to Alberta and just, get away. I mean, go and check out the Rocky Mountains or whatever, or go to Ontario. You need 30 days, say, to travel. Maybe you're going to be away. Can I pretty please go? Can I, I remember that in school, looking back at that, Rowan, and, I'd be in class and
for the bathroom pass,
yes, Brent. Can I go to the washroom? Well, no, go. You don't need to ask. Just go. You need to go and do it. Don't tell me. Just go. Do I need a hall pass? Go. It's the same thing as that someone needs to go to another province. Go. You know what? Because you're still going to pay your rent. As long as a person pays their rent, pays their bills, buys their food, does it really matter? No. I mean, right now it's called basically suffocating the movement of people, right? That doesn't need to happen. People should be able to move wherever they want to go. Actually, even the word move, they should be able to move. I mean, move physically or move geographically wherever they want to go, because their disability does not go away. They're born.
On last week's show and on previous other shows too, we've talked about the word stigma, because even our own Minister of Social Development here, our new one here in BC, she did a speech in the legislature, and she used she herself used the word stigma, it was 5 or 6 times almost in the same sentence. Almost, it was just like stigma, like one after the other, like rapid fire, like stigma, and she was using it when she was referring to the stigma of the drug supply. She was saying stigma of the drug supply is bad, like drug supply, right? Poison drug supply. Stigma is like we have to remove the stigma of the drug supply, and yet so they can say that about the drug supply, but they don't ever use the word stigma and disability. But I mean, that's huge. I mean,
it is.
The whole social assistance system here in BC and all across Canada, it's basically
ancient,
discriminatory right from the ground up. But like it's baked in, like the discrimination is baked right into the fabric of the whole pillared system.
Yeah,
it's baked in discrimination all the way through. And
then all they do is just copy and paste as they go along and just tweak a few things, but keep the foundation going because status quo, right? That's what works. And they don't want to change nothing. They seem to be just it's like the walls are like or the ears have a bunch of wax and they don't want to hear, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. And ableism is one that's been it's so historically normalized at this point that these like ableist ideologies are so baked into governments, institutions, like all of the different ways society operates, and people have sort of bought into this idea that, you know, disabled bodies need to be monitored or surveyed or like infantilized or, you know, and that there needs to be some kind of state control, and that's absolutely not how we should be treating people and, you know, with basic human rights. But ableism, I think even in mainstream society, still remains one of those ones that people are really afraid to challenge or really don't know how to talk about. But you're right, it's completely baked in. And, you know, this idea that disabled people shouldn't be able to choose their partner or have to declare their partner, that's like very archaic thinking. Or this idea that people should have to keep proving they're disabled over and over. That's like not a valuable.
Well, that's the thing is that they have a declaration that if you have any changes to report, if you have no changes to report, they don't require you to send nothing in. But if you have a major change to report, they have a declaration page that actually says right on there that have you been incarcerated? Have you been imprisoned? Have you been put in prison? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, like is this?
And here's another new thing too. I just found out from the ministry's office just recently. Yeah. So Sonia has to go to a medical procedure coming up, and the doctor signed off on it. Okay. Now it requires accommodation because her appointment's very early at the hospital to go to. So that would require, obviously, I'm on the island, so you can't take the ferry to get there in time. It'd be rushed. You just be, and they want you to be relaxed with the procedure. Okay. So regarding that, so now the form, and even that this is the minister one of the workers at the counter, as she even admitted that these forms are so outdated, they're so archaic, and you can't believe that why the government hasn't updated these forms. It doesn't have any mode of BC ferries on there. As for driving, I think of a taxi, plane, a float plane, whatever, but there's no ferry on there. So there's nowhere to mark it off that to cover your travel expense.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So yeah, like that's how outdated it is, and they agreed that things have to change. Like, and they're frustrated. I can tell that they want to see so much change, and they're just at the front counter. They do all the stuff and they submit it off, but they want to see change. We asked about, is the 125 going to be brought forward sooner? No, that's not going to happen. They said no. They started laughing. That's funny. Yeah. They said, no, you got to wait till July. Like, really? People are suffering now? You got to wait till then? So it tells me, again, another systemic issue that they're deliberately delaying. Like, why the delay? I don't get the delay. Like, people's lives don't get put on hold. So what's your take on that, Rowan? Like, with like the inequalities of being like the delay tactics. With that being said, then there was another topic, but I'll get to that in just a moment. I'm going to get your takeaway on that part.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, you hit the nail on the head. Like, people are suffering and have been suffering for a long time. Like, CERB ran out a while back, and like people are still Like the cost of food is huge. We hear from people all the time, like they can't afford groceries anymore. And, there's a lot of working families out there with, single parents who are trying to feed their kids who just can't afford groceries and are, working multiple jobs or working gig work or trying to make ends meet and it's not working. Like the cost of housing, like it doesn't, yeah, anybody can look around and see that like it's absolutely not. There's an affordability crisis and there's a housing crisis, and those things mean that for people, it's extremely difficult. And I think the measures that have been taken so far, things like these $100 payments that BC Hydro makes that across the board, it's like there's a lot of people that are making a lot of money that don't need that $100, and if they could take that and like make it target, I think you're right that equity and justice needs to be really built into how we're making interventions, and that hasn't been what's been happening. And so I think you're right that like people can't wait till July. People need support now.
Well, that's that's the thing is that with the cost of everything so high, there's parents right now, single parents, single moms, single dads. I mean, and just the average person who is working at low income, and even ones that are in higher income now, they're actually feeling the pinch of going, like, so there's a problem. If you're getting ones that are even higher up there and they're going, I can't do what I used to be able to do. What's going on? Now imagine the ones that are low income, how they're feeling, right? Yeah. And so the government officials watching this, like just imagine, put yourselves into the shoes of a person of low income or even a person making a 6-figure salary, and they're struggling. And a person who's a mom or a dad, just bringing up their children, just a single mom or dad, and having to sacrifice taking a meal off the table so that their child can have something to eat, but they're going to go without so their child can have it. Cut back 3 meals a day down to maybe 1 meal a day. Like it's really like one of my neighbors actually is doing that. It really heartbreaks me knowing that, but they have to sacrifice because, well, they're paying high rent. And they have to cut back where they need to cut back. And where else are they going to keep cutting, right? They need to listen to people in their constituency of saying, lived experience, this is what we're going through. Take it to the institution saying, okay, and regardless of the partisan issues, right? Within the parties, they need to work together and saying, well, how can we make BC and every other province in Canada a much better place? I'm sure if they can all really work together rather than arguing, oh no, I need to be in government, you need to sit in opposition. Like work together for God's sake, just once, and make things better.
When you said justice, Rowan, that word means a lot to me too, because that's actually a word that I always use in like my 10 years of emails to MLAs and to the government here. I use the words righteousness and justice, and I say, tell me how a clawback is an example of righteousness and justice. Like how, if you can tell me that, and I mean, I know it should be a simple question. I know it's not in a sense, but I mean, the fact that nobody can say that that's a righteous thing or it's a just thing. I mean, right there, that shows the perversion of the policy, right? It's like it's so in your face, like it's so obvious that it's not just, it's not righteousness. So why are you doing it? And that to me is the most frustrating thing. Like I said, I spent 10 years of writing emails, and I'm always using the words justice and righteousness, and then like prove to me that your policy is a just thing. If you prove to me that it's a just thing, I'll go away. I won't bug you anymore. I'll just go away. But prove to me first. So
a lot of these things are just like policy driven, and so many things need to change. What's your take on that, Rowan? Regarding these policies, obviously they're deliberately written that way to suppress down to people's incomes. I mean, I just want your take on that, and then kind of stem into about this minimum wage going up too. I've been hearing a lot of good things, bad things. Good things where, people are going to have a few more dollars, maybe. but the impact that's going to have on society is not so good, because it's going to make all the prices now keep going up even further. So now if people who aren't going to those places, they may go to the grocery store, now those prices are going to go up even higher. So, it's called cutting all the taxes within the small business, giving them a break. Now that money flows better. I just so much inequality, but I guess policies again. So, what do you take on this?
Yeah, I think that can be a really frustrating thing about, doing advocacy work or doing lobbying work, where you can see that there are policy interventions that would be really useful and impactful, and then you see them not happening. It can be very frustrating. We have a thing called the Blueprint for Justice, which outlines our policy platform in 4 different areas, from economic security to climate justice and the sort of, extreme impacts that people who are low income or people with disabilities and seniors are experiencing because of climate extreme weather events and things like this. And so, I think the problem isn't that there aren't great policy solutions out there. The problem is getting the people with the authority to make those changes, make them. But I do think one thing that's interesting about our times right now is that, like, for example, more and more people who are historically of like middle class income are needing to access food banks, for example.
Yes.
Which is really interesting. It's like more and more people, I think, understand that during times of crisis, many people had to access supports. And I think that's becoming more understood and normalized, and hopefully a little bit less stigmatized. And so I'm hoping that will mean more public support for, bringing the rates up to the poverty line, for implementing better food security systems across BC, for investments in things like free childcare. And other universal systems like free dental. Why don't we have dental care for people? People can't afford to go to the dentist. Like, why don't we have, programs for low income folks to access basic healthcare needs? I think fair pharmacare is another good one, where it's like people understand that medication is expensive and that, people shouldn't have to pay hundreds of dollars out of pocket just to stay alive. And so I think that there is like public support and sentiment for many of the policy recommendations being made to government. And so it's really a question of how to get these things implemented and how to like move that power to do the right thing.
And I think you're right that there are more people affected now, so it is normalizing the discussion. But what I wanted to highlight too is, now and in the past, I think there's this kind of a wrong understanding of people thinking that, a disabled life isn't worth living somehow. So, if it's not worth living, it must be worth not supporting either. Like, this kind of undercurrent stigma, if you will, of people saying, well, we know your life sucks. We know your life sucks as a disabled person, so why don't we just let your life suck then and not support it, And I think that's been a prevailing, it's kind of an unsaid thing. Nobody wants to say it out loud, like, God forbid. But it's one of those things that, it is kind of an undercurrent of something that's not said, but it's a very prevalent thing of, like, a disabled life is not worth living, so go on and let your life suck. Or like in the case of MAID, let's end it if it's not worth supporting then. Like, here you can go kill yourself, but we're not going to support you financially.
Yeah, and that's that's exactly what so many people have been saying in the disability community, is saying, well, they want to live. You just give us the proper supports and the income supports and the proper supports to support their disability. If maybe there's other equipment they needed upgrading, but they can't afford to buy it, so now they suffer, and then their health diminishes down. And the government goes, well, yeah, but you're not contributing into society anyway, right? So, and that's wrong. Like, exactly, is that narrative? People have their worth. It doesn't matter if they're disabled or not. They're people. They have that. That's who they are. And society has to accept who they are. Just because they don't put back into the community, why they can't put back into the communities, they don't have the resources. We'll give them the resources. They can put money back in the community. They can do things.
But we still are taxpayers, and that's the other thing that bugs me too. Is there seems to be a false understanding again that if the provincial government gives all this money to the disabled, it's like it's money that's going to be flushed away and you're not going to see it again. I mean, are you kidding me? Really, if they put all that money into the system again, I mean, that's probably the best way to redistribute the wealth, because like I'm going to be spending the money and like supporting all these other people, and you're going to be spending the money and supporting all these people locally. We're not going to be squirreling it away in like investment funds or shares or bonds or anything like that. We're actually just going to be going out and spending it back into the community again.
Yeah.
So this
like there, see, right there.
There you go.
This idea that money spent on the disabled to raise the rates is going to be wasted money is ridiculous. Of course it's not. It's they think that money is just going to disappear and they're not going to see it again. Well, that's false. That's a false narrative.
Well, the minister just recently, before she was announcing about the town hall meeting, she was promoting, talking about the food banks. Mm-hmm. Like, why? Like, just give the money to the disabled in British Columbia, where now, like you mentioned, Neil, now they can buy what they need. Mm-hmm. They know what's best. People know what's best for their dietary needs. If they have diabetes, I mean, they have to eat a specific diet. They have to watch their sugar levels. But you go to a food bank, they're not going to have all that nutritional stuff there for them. So you're giving people the money and resource that they need. They can actually use that more effectively. I'm all for food banks if it's just an emergency, but how society is now taking it is, as we learned that you mentioned, and Rowan, like during COVID, like it was something that it was unprecedented that people needed that help right away. Okay, now food banks were blossoming. People needed that help. We now learn to kind of adapt away from that part of now going, okay, now we got income insecurity. How do we fix this? It's a systemic issue. So, and I'm not going to focus on basic income stuff, but we need something like that to get people going, like something like a CERB, DERB, something in there where it's going to get things boosted up. And that kind of stems into that Canada disability thing, but I don't know.
Well, I think you've named it, because that's the difference between food charity and food justice. Like food banks were originally formed as like a World War II response to feed people as a temporary measure.
I was just going to say that it was a wartime measure, right?
Yeah, it was temporary back then, and there was like soup kitchens, and my mom used to tell me stories because she actually worked in it during the war, so she would tell me a lot of stories of what went on. And when she said food banks, they weren't even supposed to be a part of our fixture. And as she got older, she kept saying, why are they pushing this narrative about food banks? We don't need it. We just give people more money. And of course, I would be advocating, going, this needs to be changed, Brent. Yeah, this and that should stop. No, her and I would get in arguments. No, we need to stand up for what we believe in. We need to stand up for our rights of who we are as Canadians. And so I she taught me a lot going forward, and I learned a lot. Seniors, they would tell you so much back then. And I look back then at when, my gosh, just decades ago, Rowan, Neil, anyone watching, my gosh, I can remember going to the store, getting a chocolate bar, and I didn't buy too much junk food. I do a paper route and do some babysitting way back when, right? But I'd save my money to buy a bicycle. But anyway, so 25 cents for a chocolate bar.
I remember that.
35 cents for a small bag of chips, like one of those little snacks, ones. And a bottle pop for 35 cents. It came to $1.05, including the deposit. Now, there's no tax. There was no tax, no viral fee, no nothing. So I made an agreement. They said, okay, go do your paper route, bring back the bottle, and we'll just charge you $1. $1 bill. Yeah, paper bill. Wow. What is that? What is a paper bill?
So different.
$1.
No, I remember going to the corner stores, and my sister would always get like a whole bag of the penny candies. Like she'd get a whole huge bag of penny candies. But for me, I didn't like the penny candy stuff. So I would just get like 4 chocolate bars for $1, right? And and it was great. I was like, and the chocolate bars were huge at that time.
They were bigger.
They were big, and it was 4 chocolate bars, great for $1. It's like yes, But I wanted to get back to what you said, Rowan, about you mentioned the word charity, and I think that is another really important word to focus back in on too, because again, the entire social assistance system is pillared or founded on charity. It's not founded on any kind of justice or that you deserve this, that your life is a little bit more difficult, so we the government are willing to support you. It's completely 110% all like founded on charity. It's like, well, we're just going to give you this like pittance out of charity because we're like the good government, so we're willing to give you charity, but we're not willing to acknowledge that that your survivor's pension is worth protecting. Like, like all these labor laws, for example, getting back to my pension, like all these labor laws protect pensions as a protected income, and yet the government says, oh, it's not protected. And I mean, even when it comes down to rates, like it used to be not that long ago that PWD income support, it was a protected pension.
Right.
And then the governments perverted it and took it away and said, you know what, you don't deserve that as a protected income or as a protected pension. We're just going to say it's all charity now. And that's the wrong-headed move again. Like it's very disrespectful. And again, it putting less worth on people that are vulnerable, not just people with disabilities, but anybody that's vulnerable on income assistance. It's basically saying, you know what, anybody on income assistance deserves to be othered, deserves to be a less than, deserves to be, just kind of discarded and thought of less, like you're a less person, and we can treat you as a less person, and it doesn't matter because your life sucks. That's and we will just let it suck because we know it sucks, kind of thing. And that's just again, it's a wrong-headed notion, and I think government has to walk back from that.
Yeah, there was a gentleman who was sitting in front of the ministry's office in downtown Victoria just a couple of days ago, and so I wanted to walk in there. We just had to drop off a form. That's it, right? And there was a long lineup. I didn't realize. And some lady had a radio blaring really loud, and security wouldn't let her in. She was really causing a scene, unfortunately. But I can understand that. And I didn't know the conversation, so that's fine. She's like, the lineup's back there. I'm like, well, thank you very much for telling me. There was a guy right there, and he says, yeah, the lineup's right behind me. And he looked really down and out. So, we had to wait for a little bit. So I talked to him. And I said, well, I'm an advocate. I can't change the world, and I don't try to change the world. I can try to make it a better place, right? And so I said to him, talk to me. Like, he says, well, I don't want to talk to anybody. So anyway, long story short, he talked to me. And I said to him, like, I'm here to listen. Like, I'm not government. I'm not here to to single you out or saying you need to prove yourself to me. If you want to talk to me, talk to me. And so he did. He talked to me very briefly. And I said, look, I'm here for you, right? I'm here to listen. I'm here to take notes, mental notes, and I will take that forward and I'll try to make changes to help you. He says, thank you. Like, and that really touched here. Like, he said, thank you. Like, knowing that somebody's actually there to listen. Because he says, those people in there, they don't want to listen. They don't care. I go, well, we have to make them care because people have value. Their lives are value. And so this goes to anybody watching this right now. Like, we're just here to try to make some change, to try to focus on all the inequalities. What can we do to, as allies, as advocates, as citizens, what can we all do to make things better, a better place? Because everyone has lived experience. They all have their stories. And there's so much infighting going on. It's all got to stop. I mean, my gosh, if they could all have all their neat little ideas and bring them all forward. And now we can always sometimes not always agree with things, right? But there's also a lot of things that we can. And I think as society, even including government, like you need to listen to people across the country. In British Columbia, we got such a beautiful province here. So many people are moving here. Let's prove that we can make it a good place for everybody. We can. I know we can. And and so like Rowan, what's your view on that? We can make this a better place for sure.
Absolutely. Like, I think, I think about abundance and what it would look like to experience the world in an abundance framework of
Yeah,
like BC is a wealthy,
yeah,
very wealthy province. We absolutely have the money to like take care of people and be kind to
yeah.
people and treat people well. I come at this work from a human rights-based lens too, and it's like
Mhm.
disabled people are human beings. Like, why aren't
Yeah,
we humanizing people? Why aren't we giving people beyond the basic needs? We can afford much more than that. We can afford, kind and generous world building together. And, I don't see why we don't. There's really no reason why we don't, aside from political will. And I just, yeah, I think that, what you said before about MAID, like the way that we've treated, so collectively as a society, the way that we've treated disabled people for hundreds of years has been outrageous and atrocious. And the way that, people were forced to navigate COVID in terrible ways, and things like heat domes that impact disabled people disproportionately. Like, these things are happening, and there's absolutely preventable measures we can take to treat each other compassionately and kindly and generously. And I just don't see why we don't do that.
yeah. There's so much patchwork systems across the country, and all those patchwork systems, and people that are watching right now, they're like, well, what does he talk about patchwork systems? When I say that, we've got EI, we've got GIS, GIS is for seniors, OAS for seniors, we've got child tax credits, we've got GST, with EI, we've got all these tax measures. And what does that equal to? A basic income or a UBI or basic income. Like, it's a universal income. It's there. All we need to do, and we got all the programs for in each province. Some are a lot less, way below the poverty level, which is unacceptable.
Or
So we need to bring all these up, right,
or
and
you
tie it all
have
together.
or you have things like where they give with one hand and take with another.
Oh yeah,
Like
yeah.
for example
Right.
the bus pass, the
Oh my
provincial
gosh, yeah.
bus pass here. I mean, it used to
They
be
still
like
never restored.
everybody would get it, and then they said, well, you can get it or we'll take it away, but we'll give you money for food. So it's an either or, right? It's like,
Yeah,
we'll give you money for food or you can ride the bus. Like, but
yeah,
not both. We can't give you both, but we can. It's an either or thing, and that's kind of just a perverse policy, kind of putting the hammer down and saying, choose. Do you want food or do you want a bus? And that's not right.
I remember the one minister who was in charge of that, and I'd run into her every so often. She's like, Brent, I said, it's not fair. You need to restore that. It's equity in the system. It is, all these magic words,
Yeah.
right? It was these unicorn words, and I said, no, like, come on, like, you need to restore that. She goes, people can choose. If they don't want a bus pass, take the $52. I go, okay, so you take a taxi across the city to an appointment or maybe shopping, take it back. There's your $52. Sorry, you got to stay isolated for the rest of the month now. Versus having a $45 a year bus pass.
Yeah,
Give them that.
they
And
were
give them the $52. I mean, on top of that, I mean, wow.
they
Imagine
were they
that.
were changing the system for the 1 or 2%.
Right.
Let's change the whole system. Let's tear it down to accommodate the 1 or 2% that don't take the bus. I mean,
Yeah, I think there was only 5 or 6 people in one area
it's just
that
crazy.
actually said they didn't want it.
Yeah,
Oh, and that was the DTS. It was the disability. No, STS. Sorry, Special Transportation Subsidy is what it was. That's right. And they got enough for those people in an isolated area, had enough to pay for car insurance because it was cheap. And then they took it away and they said, okay, we're going to give everybody $52, or you can have a bus pass. Well, the people in a rural area, they don't have transportation, so they just took
Right.
the money. So now they can use that as a taxi, maybe an Uber. Well, now they got Uber. A lot of those didn't have it back then. However, it was isolated away. And then, of course, they had Greyhound back then. Now, when Greyhound now pulled away, now they don't even have that transportation. So that comes to another whole aspect of transportation again, is giving people that choice of saying, well, you can have or not have, like clawed away or give it. And I tell you, the government at that day, they actually got scrutinized, because I still remember that one. I don't know if you remember that, Rowan. So they gave that, remember that, here's $77. Well, here, $52 for a bus pass, but you get to have $25 left. People are like, wait, so I only get $25? Then they realized they screwed up. So they said, okay, fine, you know what? Let's just give everybody the $77 back. Then they gave everybody a $52 and like, wow, everyone got this increase. But then you still ended up with choose that bus pass. Mm-hmm. But it was in the mandate. It was still in the government's current mandate was to restore that.
Yeah.
And
but sorry, we've destroyed the computer.
But the computer was broken. They blamed the other. They broke
the computer's been destroyed.
I didn't know about this.
No, it is. It is.
Yeah, so I called.
That was their excuse, is that they destroyed the computer, so they couldn't they couldn't give that back, the bus pass. That was that was their reasoning.
So I sat down in the former minister's office when he was in opposition, and then he became our premier. I still have the photo of that. One day I'll have to show it to you, Ron, when we'll meet up one day. I got the picture, and so we sat in the office, and that was when the bus pass broke out. There was this issue of what? I go, no, they took the bus pass away. They're going to take it away. I haven't heard anything about this. And John says, what, is this true? And his staffer goes, John, yeah, this is true. I just got a message saying, hey, they're going to be taking this away. Oh my gosh. And that's how I got involved with the $45 a year bus pass, because I was outraged. I said, how that's going to affect people's lives. And he's like, well, no, it's a basic means of transportation. You can't just give it and take it away.
Yeah. And at that time, that was when I was in communication quite a bit with Sam Sullivan, the MLA, right. Sam Sullivan.
Yeah.
And I one of the questions I asked him, other than my clawback situation, was, they said, well, kind of what kind of went down about the bus pass, and he said, to be honest, Neil, he said everybody kind of had a gun to their head. It was like, you either do this, like vote for this, or we're just going to take the whole thing off the table, like all the money and everything off the table. So it's either we give the bus pass, or like claw it back or whatever, do that, or nothing. And so all the MLAs, that's the way it was given to them. It's like a party whip thing. It's like all the MLAs had to kind of vote in line, and it was kind of forced on them. It's like, you vote for this or else we're gonna like just take the whole thing away. And so it was like everybody had the gun to their head and like, vote this way or nothing.
And then we'll just say the computer got dismantled.
Yeah.
And so I remember phoning up Best Buy, because I used to do computer programming way back when, and so I knew a lot about coding on that. I'm thinking, well, this is not hard. I mean, you just copy paste. I mean, you could duplicate it. I used to duplicate my discs all the time. Copy paste. I mean, and when they told me that, I'm thinking, okay, my gosh. And I remember talking to the government. I said, are you kidding me? I used to do programming. I said, you bought me to believe this? Well, no, that's true. That's what happened. I go, no, it's not true. But whatever. I said, it's fine. Spin it out. That's fine. Spin it out there. I mean, everybody believed that. I mean, yeah.
We're getting to the top of the hour here. Do we want to have closing comments from anyone?
Sure. Yeah, Rowan, I'll pass it over to you, and then we'll have our closing comments. I just want to thank you so much for coming on, and this has been an awesome segment, and we'll have to do this again. But I'm going to put the mic over to you and go for it.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you both for having me. This has actually been just a delight to chat about some of these things. And just talk about it, because these things are realities for many people, and it's really important to have these conversations and keep on keeping the good work that all of you and both of you and the audience, I'm sure, is doing as well. We can do a lot better. Hope we do.
Good.
Yes, most definitely. And there's so much change that needs to happen, and advocacy going forward. It doesn't, advocacy never takes a break. It's tireless advocacy work. I enjoy it. I enjoy it because I get to hear lived experience stories from so many people. And it's just one thing I've learned in life is to bring people all together. I used to have it on Twitter Space. I moved it over to here because it was having the guests, they've always been the number one focus of my show. And just a lot of technology glitches on Twitter Space, and I fell overall, and there was just so many things. And so I brought it over to here, because that way we can stay focused on advocating and talking about the issues of what today, and going forward, of yesterday, today, tomorrow. what needs to change and how it affects people's lives. Maybe they have lived experience of what they're going through, and they tell me their stories, and we can channel all this together and make positive change. Neil, over to you.
Yeah, well, I've really enjoyed our little talk today. It's been good. Yeah,
it's fantastic. And having you join on today, Rowan, it was awesome. I look forward to having you come back on again. We'll definitely reach out.
Absolutely.
I'll get to reach out to you, and we'll have another segment, and we'll continue on because these important discussions, they never take a break.
It's true, and we didn't even talk about the Canada Disability Benefit, so we'll add that for the agenda for next time.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, definitely. I know we ran out of time on that, but definitely I'd like to dive into that conversation too, for sure.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Rowan.
Well, I want to say thank you very much, Rowan, for coming on today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.